Welcome back to the Buck Sexton Show. I want to talk to you about the crazy left, which is going to be fun. Obviously, that's going to be a great time. But first, I had mentioned before this it's a New York Times poll of battleground states, and here are the actual states. I got some of them right. Trump, Biden, Sanders, Warren. And this was from October 13th to October 26th. Here's what was said. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Florida, Arizona, North Carolina. Here's how this all matches up. Trump in Michigan, Biden up 1, Sanders up 3. Against Warren, Trump up 4. Trump in Pennsylvania, Biden up 1, Sanders, Trump up 1. Warren, Trump up 2. Wisconsin, Biden up 2, Sanders even, Wisconsin, Trump up 2. Florida, Biden up 2, Trump up 2, Trump up 4 against Warren, up 2 against Sanders. Arizona, Biden up 2, Trump up 4, even. North Carolina, Trump up 2, Trump up 4, Trump up 4 against Sanders and Warren. Does that sound like a situation where the Democrats should feel good? Let's keep in mind, Biden's a weak candidate. Media is propping him up as much as they can. He has the entire Hillary establishment now behind him, effectively. Not really the Obama coalition, but he's got the Hillary establishment backing Biden, which is interesting. When I mean CNN, MSNBC. I mean, Biden is now their guy. Okay, but there's an understanding, there's some level of recognition that this is not a good idea, right? That Biden is unlikely to be able to defeat Trump, even if the polls right now have him up. That's all within the margin of error, which means the polls could be oversampling Biden support, and that wouldn't be surprising at all, would it? But Warren is getting crushed by Trump in all these places. Warren is getting crushed by Trump. And Sanders is getting crushed everywhere except for Michigan, basically, and even in Wisconsin. But Arizona, North Carolina, Florida, Sanders gets beaten. And this is all with the entire negative focus of the media against Trump and the split focus and the gentle criticism among different Democratic candidates that you get right now. So there you have it, my friends. This is why Democrats are in a state of freak out and panic over all of this. They don't talk about it that way, but that's why Nancy Pelosi has such a wide berth here. That's why she's able to do, and Schiff is able to do so much in order to try and change the game. Which brings me now to Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Because you know there are a lot of Democrats that are still kind of hoping that it won't be, that Biden is this old, confused establishment figure. He is, folks, we already know he's corrupt. The whole thing with his son was so gross. It was wrong. It was wrong. It doesn't matter. If it's not illegal, that still is, you're still allowed to vote based on whether something is unseemly. And we don't even know, by the way, the extent of the possible wrongdoing of what Biden and his son did, because they have not had an investigation. Now, maybe Ukraine did the investigation, or maybe they said there's nothing there, but there's enough there from my end just to say, hey, maybe we should look into this a little bit more. But let's talk a bit now about, let's start with Bernie, and then we'll get into Warren.
Bernie, I want to talk about Bernie just so I can do the Bernie Sanders impersonation, because it's my favorite one. It really gets me fired up. It gets me awake, gets me going. It's producer Mark's favorite because he's got a New York accent, and producer Mark is from the New York area, right?
I just want to hear him sing Hanukkah songs.
Producer Mark, by the way, is Jewish. Producer Mark, if you want to tell us about Hanukkah one day, you know more
sure.
about it.
Sure. I'll tell you the story of Hanukkah.
Thank you. So,
Bernie's out there saying he's not left-wing. These are not left-wing ideas. These are the ideas the American people.
You got to open one eye kind of big sometimes, too. Like, you got to squint one eye, open one eye big, wave the hand around.
The American people want this to happen?
Here's what Bernie says. Play clip 8, please. We'll hear from actual Bernie instead of my fake Bernie. Play 8.
My ideas are not far left. They are the ideas that the American people want.
The ideas the American people want. People want Medicare for all until they find out what Medicare for all would be and what it would cost. And then all of a sudden they don't want Medicare for all. It's not even Medicare for all, my friends. We'll get it. And I know this is where we start already thinking about the disaster that Elizabeth Warren is trying to deal with in her. I have a plan. I have a plan that's going to take care of everybody's going to have better health care. No one's going to pay a penny more. No, that's not true, unfortunately. It's going to cost you a whole lot of money. We'll get into once you start talking about trillions of dollars, everybody should be on edge. Once we're in the reimagining, remaking the entire U.S. economy and trillions of dollars involved in it, everybody should be thinking to themselves, what's really going on here? What is really happening? All right. Now, one area that I think we could all understandably just refuse Bernie Sanders' claim of a policy the American people want is the Green New Deal. Here's what Senator Sanders has to say about that. Play clip 7.
Unlike the current president, I don't believe that climate change is a hoax. I believe it is an existential threat to our country and the entire world. And that is why I strongly support the Green New Deal, which will create up to 20 million jobs, transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy.
I mean, this is terrifying. I think it's terrifying that anybody in the press hears this and takes it seriously. First of all, if you think that climate change is an existential threat, then I'd like to know why this, if that is true, if that claim that is made,
Climate change is an existential threat, 20 million jobs,
all this stuff, if that is true, why is any other issue right now even being spoken about by these Democrats? Existential means existing or not. If losing the battle over climate change when you have one political party, which I'm a part of, with a lot of people in it, although not everybody, I think even Newt Gingrich believes in climate change at some level. I'd have to check back on that. I mean, climate change is real. It's always been real, though, folks. This is the problem. This is the framing of the issue is inherently problematic. There's always been climate change. That's a fact. Climate is not static. How could it be static? That wouldn't make any sense. Weather is not static. And I think the description once in the UN's IPCC report was, climate is a nonlinear, decoupled chaos system or something. I mean, it's like really complicated stuff. No one really knows exactly how it goes, where it goes, and what it's doing all the time. We're still figuring a lot of this out, actually. But if it were the case, if we took the Democrats at their word, like Bernie Sanders, on this issue, if it's an existential threat, then nothing else should matter. But if nothing else should matter, then why is there all this focus on other issues ranging from Medicare for all to transgender rights to making sure that illegal aliens who cross into America have taxpayer-funded abortions? I mean, there's all these different areas the Democrats are just so strongly engaged in and use very extreme rhetoric in their efforts to try and push. None of those are existential issues, right? I mean, if we're talking existential threats, shouldn't that be the only focus? But the Green New Deal, if you read it, as I have several times, is laughable. It's not rooted in science. It is a document for socialism. The Green New Deal is socialism via environmentalism, plain and simple. The government all of a sudden becomes able to tell you what you can buy, what you can wear, how you can drive, where you can go, what you drive, everything. And it's an existential issue, so if you oppose it, if you stand in opposition to what they're trying to do, you are basically a threat to all of us. This is scary, actually. This is not they are using words like existential. I'm not putting this in their mouths. They're using words like extinction of the human species. I'm not exaggerating this or trying to take this to a logical end that they have not yet gone to officially, but are going to at some point. They're already there. So then why is there anything else that we even have to focus on or talk about? Why is there a discussion of any other issue? Because they don't really believe it's an existential threat. They just understand how to appeal to the passions and biases of the left-wing base. And more than anything else, climate change is a massive exercise in virtue signaling. If you tell people that you believe in fighting climate change, you are within what is considered the scientific consensus, as the left describes it. You're a good person. You're a smart person. You're an ethical person. You're one of the good people. If you oppose it, you're one of the bad people. And that's really what this is. It's an exercise in personal branding. Because the moment I try to talk to people who believe in climate change about this, they start saying things like, well, I mean, I don't really think we're all going to die in 12 years oh, okay, well then why is that being said all the time? And not by one person here or there, by the leaders of the movement. Why was there this bizarre willingness from adults, including the United States Congress, but certainly across the media, to be berated by a foreign 16-year-old girl? Why was that acceptable for adults to do that? This is bizarre behavior for adults. Absolutely bizarre. And yet they did it. Never have good answers to this. But people just know that they don't want to be outside the circle of the good and the smart people, which is what the climate change believers are. The Green New Deal, if you read it, is preposterous. 20 million new jobs. What would the cost of jobs be in order to enact the proposals of the Green New Deal? These people all seem to forget that I think it's now over 90% of previously dug oil wells in the United States have fracking going on. That we have had an energy revolution for oil and natural gas because of fracking technology, which fracking technology has been around in some form even since the 1940s. But they figured out how to do it much more efficiently and much better, and it has changed the energy world. We are enormous beneficiaries of this in our economy. It even has affected geopolitics. It's kept the price of oil down, which has affected a lot of economies that are almost entirely reliant on oil for their foreign currency reserves and for paying their own bills. Places like Venezuela and Russia and Saudi Arabia, these places have not been the beneficiaries of the fracking revolution in this country, but we can never even really calculate what that's done for us. And if the climate change alarmists had their way, they tried to prevent this. I remember these movies about how all the water coming out of the tap was going to be flammable and they're going to poison the entire watershed. We're all going to, we're all going to die. These people are nuts. They're nuts, and their bad ideas have consequences, very negative consequences for real human beings. But it's just too seductive. It's too powerful to believe in something that makes you a better person than other people. It's too hard for them to walk away from this. They get excited at the notion of being better than their political opponents. It doesn't matter if they're wrong, they're still better than them. And so when Bernie Sanders says that his ideas are not far left, what could be more far left than the Green New Deal, which said that all buildings in this country must be rebuilt so that they are green energy efficient? That's a lot of buildings, folks. What could be more radical than giving the government a license to regulate everything and anything based on a scientific theory that's really a religious belief? I'd like to know what is more, short of just empowering a revolutionary committee that can direct all aspects of the economy, that can pass rules affecting us by that effectively replaces the legislature, that's called the Communist Party. So short of that, how much more radical are these policies going to get? Trillions of dollars of wealth moved from some people, some areas of the economy to others, based on the central planning expertise of Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders? People that no sane person would want involved in running a for-profit company. You wouldn't want these people telling you how to run your business. You don't think that they have a good sense of economic reality. So why should they be remaking the entire economy? This is the faculty lounge asserting itself in ways that all of us should be deeply troubled by. Not far left? How much more far left than Bernie Sanders can you really go before we stop talking about socialists and start talking about communists? Now, I know you can say, well, that seems kind of extreme. All right. The Green New Deal is not extreme. Medicare for all is not extreme. If we're talking about the outer boundaries of American politics for the last 100 years, this is it, my friends. These are the things that they're trying to get now that they've never been able to get in the past because they were considered too extreme. And now we're having an election over these very issues. Now we're having a national debate over whether Democrats should finally do the things that in every election up until now, an overwhelming majority of the American people were like, well, that's crazy. So we are voting on crazy in 2020. Make no mistake about it. And the fact that the media is trying to normalize now what even 10 years ago they would have said was far outside the realm of normalcy just goes to show you how much the left-wing acceleration has occurred. It's not just that we're getting further left. It's happening faster and faster all the time. And their victories, unfortunately, tend to be permanent. They get a government bureaucracy built that never goes away. They get a law passed. They'll do everything to make sure that it stays, and that law will not be overturned. I mean, they tend to have permanent victories. We tend to have transient defensive actions. Oh, another day, another year where liberty will still exist in this country on an issue. But it's always under assault. I am deeply troubled by the rise of the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren wing of the Democratic Party. And I'm happy to see that the polls show that they would lose to Trump. But that could change as well. If we don't speak the truth about this, if people don't understand just how bad these ideas really are, a few percentage points away. Bernie Sanders is a few percentage points away in the polls from being able to beat Donald Trump. That is, in a capitalist, free market, individual rights-based, limited government society, or what's supposed to be all those things, that is stunning.
So there is a fact about America today, and I strongly believe that justice is on the ballot in 2020. I strongly believe justice is on the ballot. And that includes, obviously, the fact that we have a criminal in the White House, and he's basically a walking indictment in a red tie.
What exactly is the crime that he committed? They'll call him a criminal. If you ask me what crime did Bill Clinton commit, he lied under oath. It's very easy. It's not complicated. What crime did Hillary Clinton commit? She violated the Espionage Act. What crime did Barack Obama commit? I don't have one for you. I think he was a bad president, made bad decisions. I don't have a crime that he committed in office. Maybe some of you can think of one. I do not have one. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend. But to say the President of the United States is a criminal for a Democrat running for office, a sitting senator at that, to say that he's a criminal and not tell you what the crime is, this is really just another version, another description of what the Democratic Party is doing these days. It's just all smears and slogans and justice. Justice is on the ballot. She keeps saying that. I wonder which political consultant handed her that poll-tested phrase that it just doesn't sound like anything that anybody who really knows what they're talking about would say going into this election. No one cares. Justice is on the ballot. This is probably why Kamala Harris is losing in her home state to Andrew Yang, who's had no backing from the establishment media, really. Kamala Harris, the problem with her is she lacks something called national-level political skills.
Political pundits and even people in our own party don't want to admit it. They think running a vague campaign that nibbles around the edges is somehow safe. But if the best Democrats can offer is business as usual after Donald Trump, Democrats will lose.
So, Elizabeth Warren is here to tell you that if you think that the safe establishment like Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden, whatever, you're going to lose. So she's saying that she's a change candidate, I suppose. Trying to borrow from some of that Obama magic from back in the day. Say what you will, Obama won 2 elections, folks. If Democrats were smart, they'd probably try to learn. But he also, there was a personal charisma that the guy had. There was personal story that's very compelling. Democrats this time around, they don't have any of that. They don't have it. None of these candidates get on stage and have any normal person look at them and say, yeah, that's a truly charismatic politician that could win a national level election. They just don't have it. They don't have it. But Elizabeth Warren is up there trying to talk about her health care plan. And she's saying that not a penny of taxes will get raised on the middle class. This is This is nuts. Elizabeth Warren was getting more and more pressure to tell us. This is the focal point from a policy angle of the Warren campaign, of the Bernie Sanders campaign, and this would be the single most transformative policy proposal for the next election. I mean, the Green New Deal, but nobody really that'll never get through the Congress. I mean, that's never going to happen. By the way, I think you could make a strong case that Medicare for all would never make it through Congress. I think that that's not a stretch in the least. I think it's quite possible that Medicare for all would, at a minimum, get so watered down that it would no longer be, well, it shouldn't be called Medicare for all as it is right now, but it would get watered down in the other direction. Right now, Medicare for all is more generous than Medicare. It is more expansive, covers more, costs out of pocket less. Of course, costs the taxpayer orders of magnitude more, as we know. But Elizabeth Warren has released her 20 pages of explanation for cost savings and all this stuff for the essentially how to pay for her Medicare for all proposal. And everybody looked at this and just said, you got to be kidding me, right? You can't really believe this. Here's the biggest red flag. Bernie Sanders, to his credit, is like,
Yes, you're going to pay more, but it's going to cost you less. Middle-class families going to pay less in premiums, and they pay more in taxes, and they get back more in health care. It's going to be amazing.
Okay, that's not good, but at least that's a plan. Not a smart plan, but it's a plan. Yeah. Could we have a Medicare for all system if the middle class was paying 60% of their income in taxes? We could probably have something like that. What would that do to economic prosperity? What would that do to the engine of growth in this country? Bad things. But could we have? Yeah, we could probably figure out a way to do that. It'd just be a really bad idea. Elizabeth Warren, though, goes to the next step and goes, oh, no, don't worry about it. I'm going to give you all the good stuff that Bernie wants to give you, but it's not going to cost normal folks, not the billionaires, not the corporations. By the way, the problem is billionaires and corporations both employ people. Billionaires own companies that give that have jobs for people, that need people for productivity and to. So just always going after the billion. And look, I'm about $1 billion short of being a billionaire, so I can't say that I can relate to the problems that they have. But I also think that demonizing the very wealthy in this country is unfair, dare I say, and also unhelpful, which is perhaps much more important. There are a lot of very, very rich people, and some of them I think, a healthy percentage of them really just inherited their money, didn't actually make it. But the fact of the matter is billionaires are important for the companies, the growth that we have in this country, the jobs that come from all of this. But Elizabeth Warren is saying that only they will pay. Play 17, please, here.
Senator, when you say you won't raise middle-class taxes, what is the income bracket that you use to define?
Here it's 100%. It doesn't raise taxes on anybody but billionaires. And you know what? The billionaires can afford it, and I don't call them middle class. So billionaire, that's where it worked.
Anyone under $1 billion net worth.
That's right. It's not paying a penny more. That's exactly right.
Not paying a penny more. That's exactly right. Not paying a penny more.
Can anyone really believe that? Can anyone really think that that is the case? They're not going to pay a penny more? How is all the money going to come together? How is this going to happen? You're going to eliminate 170 million people from their health insurance, and middle-class tax increases will be nothing? This is fantasy land stuff. Here's how the Wall Street Journal lays some of this out. Start with the overall fiscal math, which is by itself staggering. Warren concedes that her plan will cost only slightly less than the $52 trillion the U.S. is expected to spend on healthcare in the next 10 years. She deducts from that what the feds now spend on Medicare and Medicaid, plus $6 trillion that the states contribute to Medicaid. The state-federal children's health insurance program and government worker benefits. That leaves $30 trillion to finance. But Senator Warren waves her wand and says the bill will really only be $20 trillion. She makes the rest vanish by positing magical savings from things like comprehensive payment reform. One of her ideas is that the hardy perennial known as bundled payments, which has failed to reduce costs as promised by Obamacare. She says hospitals will be reimbursed at an average rate of 110% of current Medicare rates, which is supposed to address the criticism that Medicare currently undercompensates patient care. But hospitals now rely on private insurance payments to stay in business, and 110% of what Medicare now pays will hardly be enough to compensate for the loss of that private money. See, because of government mandates already in the healthcare market, like Medicare and Medicaid, there's already a subsidy process in place where your health insurance, if you have private insurance, listening to this right now, is propping up the hospitals so that they can give underpayment, or they can give care and get underpaid for it to people with Medicare, and even more so to people with Medicaid. You're paying for that already. Hospitals would go out of business without private insurers to milk to the maximum to make up for the care they give to people under Medicaid and Medicare right now. So you're going to pay even more than the Medicare rate and think that that's going to, no, without private insurers kicking on all this money, it's not going to work. The system doesn't hold together. You see, this is also why, and I know that when I was telling you about my debate at Politicon in Nashville with a couple of, one healthcare quote expert, he's a psychiatrist, and a couple of liberals, I said, why not just expand Medicaid for everybody who does not have health insurance? Just say, if you don't have health insurance, just all you have to do is sign up online, you've got Medicaid now. Why not just do that? It would be expensive, sure, but I mean, look what we're talking about, trillions and trillions of dollars. No, because they know that Medicaid is not accepted by that many providers. It's not very good insurance. Why is Medicaid not very good insurance? Well, because it doesn't pay providers and hospitals, doctors and hospitals, enough money, and there's not enough political will to funnel even more money into what is a welfare program. So what they want is to drag everybody into the same system, so that everybody's getting the same health care, and the government gets to decide what that is. So, this is dragging you in, this is dragging essentially the Medicaid pool into the rest of the healthcare pool with everybody else and saying, here you go. Now the government's going to decide how we meet all of this out. And your decisions, are you going to see a good doctor? How often do you see the doctor? Do you do preventative medicine? All these things health is a very personal issue for everybody. All these decision-making processes, the government's going to make these decisions for you. I can tell you who you can see when, or you go to private. See, what's really going to happen is that the elites, the Nancy Pelosi's and the Schumers and their kids and their families and et cetera, they're going to keep going to private doctors. You're going to have what you have in Canada. You're going to have what you have in the UK. There'll still be a private medical system, no insurance. So there'll be people that are getting great health care. That'll be a small segment. And there'll be a lot of people getting really mediocre health care. And no market mechanisms to deliver much better health care in the future. It'll stay. It'll be this big, bloated mass of government bureaucracy and mediocrity. I always say this to people. When I see a heart surgeon who pulls up to the hospital in a Porsche with a license plate that says Heartman, great. Because you want a guy who's making 7 figures to be operating on your heart with little scalpels and putting all kinds of stuff back together. You want a guy who's really good. Or do you want a system where, the people that are going to go into this, it would have been more profitable to be a veterinarian, so they went into that instead. That's where we're heading. Look at what doctors in the UK. I asked a friend of mine in the UK recently, what does a surgeon pay in the UK? And he has ties to medical. He says, a couple $100,000. It's a nice living, but it's not what heart surgeons make here, my friends. Not at big hospitals. So they don't understand the economics here. Care's not going to get better. There's the same stuff that you've been using, the same procedures, the same, ortho procedures, the same what do you call it, MRI machines. And it's like, you go to the MRI machine, it's like 1970s technology still, 1960s technology sometimes. It's not going to get better because there's no profit incentive. Why was someone going to make it better? They're just going to keep doing what they're doing right now. This is the problem with government in charge of anything. We see this every single time, but they refuse to believe it's the case now. Why? I can't even begin to tell you, other than an ideological need for state control, central planning, and socialism. That's what this is really all ultimately about. And if you thought that Elizabeth Warren had a basic understanding of economics necessary to at least be a good central planner, because there's different levels of central planning. Switzerland has pretty much universal care. So does Singapore. They have a public option. There are ways to do this. It's still expensive, but those are much smaller countries for one, and they have a public option, but they don't outlaw private insurance, and they haven't destroyed the private insurance market entirely. There are ways we could talk about this. There are ways we could make sure that nobody doesn't have any form of health care. We already have a Medicaid system that has tens of millions of people on it, for example. We're already trying to do this. But here's Elizabeth Warren when she's asked about this plan, which is just nobody really thinks that her numbers are correct. Here's what she says. What's going to happen to the whole medical insurance industry, which is a pretty big industry? Where are those people going to go work? Play 16.
So if you've had a chance to read the plan, you'll see no one gets left behind. Some of the people currently working in health insurance will work in other parts of insurance, in life insurance, in auto insurance, in car insurance. Some will work for Medicaid. And there is a 5-year transition support for everyone. Because what this is about is how we strengthen America's middle class and how we make sure that in transitions, no one gets left behind. It's right there in the plan, and it's fully paid for.
Yeah. People will go work for other insurers because it's like all the same. And those insurance companies will just inherently need a whole lot more employees than they currently have. I mean, is she serious? I think she is. Because what's going to happen is that they're just going to say, hey, you're insurance. I was insurance. Then Elizabeth Warren came by and destroyed my whole industry. And so you're just going to give me a job because insurance equals insurance. Producer Mark, I mean, I haven't been dusting off my Milton Friedman recently, but I'm pretty sure that that's not how it works.
No, I don't think that's how it works either.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not.
You notice she said auto insurance and car insurance.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, that's the same thing.
Also a good point. Yeah. But maybe if we break up auto insurance into SUV insurance and sedan insurance and all these different industries, we have more insurance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I don't pay enough for car insurance already.
But this is
Let's do
the magic of Warrenism. Just say stuff that makes no sense whatsoever. But you really want to protect the working people. You got to kind of move your hand around and bob your head around as you're talking, and then people will really believe you. This was a disaster for her. Back to this. I want to get a little more into the numbers, because if I'm going to say it's a disaster, I got to provide you with the numbers. All right, so we're talking about Elizabeth Warren's healthcare debacle and the funding for it. Wall Street Journal breaks this down today. Look, one thing Wall Street Journal knows is money. Here's what she writes. The details of how Warren would pay for the $20.5 trillion are even more fantastical. Start with her employer Medicare contribution. Instead of paying employee health care premiums, businesses would cut a check to Uncle Sam to the tune of $8.8 trillion over 10 years based on what they pay now. She says per employee health costs for every employer would remain about the same, but payroll costs of this sort are essentially middle-class taxes on employees. Fixing per employee business costs at some future date would also be an incentive for companies to reduce their coverage now to reduce future costs. So employees would get worse coverage than what they have now. If this employer contribution raises less money than projected, Her fallback is to, quote, whack big companies with extremely high executive compensation and stock buyback rates. Meantime, she'd have to also raise the corporate tax rate back to 35% from 21%. She says this would generate $1.75 trillion over 10 years, which is fanciful since it would be an immediate incentive for companies to relocate overseas. She also wants to soak the rich. She wants a new annual tax on unrealized capital gains of the wealthiest 1% of households, raising $2 trillion over 10 years. And this is a joke, folks. Elizabeth Warren, Harvard Law professor, fake Native American, not very good at math. This proposal is a joke.